Next, could our national parks be about to become ghettos for the rich, with local people driven out because they can't afford to live there? One housing association says the supply of affordable homes in the Peak District could soon dry up. And it comes after the government changed planning regulations, which now mean developers may not need to include affordable homes in their planning applications. Our political editor John Hess has been to a snowy Peak District to find out more.
If I mention to you 1066, you probably think of the Normans and their impressive castle building. But what about this? 106. It's also a number to remember, especially if you believe that every Englishman and woman's home is their castle. Trainee nurse Cassandra Hodgkinson shows her daughter's photographs of when she was crowned Carnival Queen.
I was crowned on that day as well.
This is her Peak District home of Yulegrave. She lives 10 minutes drive away these days, but she wants to live there again. But high property prices are making that an impossible dream.
It does mean a lot to me. I do feel like I've been pushed out a lot, and I would like to get back. I've got memories up there, very fond memories, and I'd like my children to have exactly the same as what I did. It gives them that sense of community that I had when I was younger, which I think is dying a lot at the moment.
To afford to pay for an 80% mortgage on an average size home, your salary would need to exceed £58,000, making this one of the most expensive areas of the East Midlands. That's £20,000 more than the regional average. Little wonder that single people and low-wage earners are simply priced out the market.
I wouldn't even start trying to think about it. We couldn't even afford to get a mortgage to cover the price of the house in full in your grave. They're just so highly priced. Renting would be an only option, but then the rent is quite high.
And Derbyshire Dales are very committed to providing affordable housing.
Yulegrave, even on a cold winter's day in the snow, it's easy to see the attraction of wanting to live here. A short walk from the local church, I'm shown a small development, one of the first for many years, of new homes. Some offer rent only.
They should be ready for the end of March.
Remember that figure, 106? That's the section in planning regulations that ensured homes for rent, affordable housing, are included in new private developments. Section 106 has now been dropped for some small-scale housing schemes. And the consequences?
I have used the phrase ghettos for the elderly rich, and we're in danger of having villages like that across the Peak District if we're not careful. Yulegrave's a wonderful community, it's a great, vibrant community, but to stay like that, it needs to rejuvenate and it needs to be able to keep its young people here.
That's why there's growing political heat on government ministers from rural areas like the Derbyshire Dales on the 106 issue.
I can't see there's going to be a philanthropic builder that's going to build affordable houses at affordable prices. They're just going to build nice houses, expensive houses, and the cost of housing in Derbyshire Dales is way above the national average.
Now there's to be a legal challenge to overturn the government's Section 106 decision.
There are authorities that are seeking a judicial review of this decision, and we have provided them with the evidence as to how it's going to affect us, the money we're going to lose and the opportunities that are now going to be lost as a result of this action.
I think a lot of the locals probably tend to feel like they are being pushed out and not being able to pass on their experiences growing up as a child.
If there's no thaw in the Section 106 planning row, this battle could end up in the courts.
And John's still thawing out. And we did ask the Housing Minister, Brandon Lewis, for an interview, but he declined. Antonia Zenkovic from the Green Party has joined us, though. Antonia, your party policy emphasises local provision for local needs. So should we be building more, or should we be cutting back in areas like the Peak District in the East Midlands?
It very much depends on the area. I mean, local provision for local need means more people, more local people involved in those decisions. It also means looking at using empty properties. We would have an empty property order, which would mean that disused properties could be reused. There's a huge problem with empty properties.
But in the Peak District, would you advocate no more building there?
No, of course not. In fact, one of the problems has been that one of the problems has been that there's been no social housing built to speak of for about 20 years. And we need energy efficient, accessible social housing and commonly owned housing that fits people's needs. So that if there are a lot of single people, if there are a lot of childless couples, if there are a lot of families, the elephant in the room is austerity. We've got the perfect storm of more people who cannot afford homes.
To get onto the property ladder.
And especially with inflation in the housing market, which is basically making more people have bigger debts to cover national debts.
So we're talking affordability here. People just can't afford to get onto the property ladder.
Not in North West Leicestershire. What we're doing there is looking at the local need, carrying out a survey, and then we're creating exception sites where affordable homes can be built on relatively cheaply acquired land for people with links to the local village. There's another 10 units have just opened on Southwith Drive in Breedon on the Hill.
OK, but you heard your colleague there, and he's a senior Conservative politician, Lewis Rose, the leader of Derbyshire Dales District Council. He says that your party, and his party, by the way, has got it wrong on this when it comes to affordable housing in the Peak District.
Well, that may be for the Peak District, but it's for quite a long time now you've had a situation where if developments were less than 10 houses, and the problem with villages is that they tend to be small-scale developments, but some of the villages are only hamlets. But that can be got round by using the exception site, where you assess what the community needs, whether it's 3 bungalows and a 2-bedroom house, speak to the community and get an exception site to allow that development to go ahead.
John, this changes to small-scale developments, and you wanted to see that, didn't you?
Yes, but no, I mean, national parks, the government's got it wrong by allowing developers in to run rampage over the national parks and the Peak District. I think that's outrageous. And I agree with the Tories who are attacking their own party on this, but elsewhere, allowing young couples, for example, to build their own house on a plot of land, I think should be encouraged. And I managed to get the taxes on that removed in order to encourage that. That's one way in which people can get themselves a house.
I think I'm a big supporter of shared equity schemes. We've got some of those in North West Leicestershire as well. And one thing the government could do, which would help, is to extend the help to buy to shared equity, which currently it is not. And I think we should do that.
OK, well, you need to be earning, though, £41,000 to own a place in your constituency in North West Leicestershire.
That's the maximum to be classed as affordable, yes.
Where the average house price, we're told, is £180,000. That's a lot of money, isn't it, to be able to afford a home in your constituency? How are people going to be able to do that?
Well, we've got help to buy, and we've got shared equity for those who can't reach that criteria.
So are you saying it's not an issue then in your area?
We're building hundreds of new homes in North West Leicestershire. We've got thousands to come over the next few years. They were selling Ibstock was recently, the new development there was the fastest selling development in the whole of the Midlands last year. So people are wanting to live in North West Leicestershire. People are living in North West Leicestershire. They're buying houses. The market's working.
Antonia, he says the market's working. What do you think about what they're both saying on this?
I would ask how many of those houses are second homes, how many of those houses are... It's quite clear that they're not affordable for most people, and they're going to be people that are commuters. The bus services are collapsing, the communities are collapsing. These are not houses for communities.
Unemployment's just dropped to 1.5% in my constituency.
But how many of those
week.
jobs? This is a game of numbers. Most of these jobs now that we're seeing, both rurally and in cities, end up being 0 hours contracts.
That's absolute rubbish.
Or
absolute rubbish.
low paid jobs. The austerity cuts.
Two-thirds of the jobs created by this government last 5 years have been white collar.
We wouldn't be having this conversation. We would not be having this conversation about affordable housing if people could afford housing. Let me just bring in John here.
Hasn't it always been the story, really, John, that those who can afford to live where they want? If you want to live in a village, if you can afford to, you go there. If not, you don't.
It has, but the government's rigged the housing market in favour of developers building 5, 6, 7-bedroom houses as investments.
Developers will build what they can sell. They won't build them if they can't sell them.
No, but giving local people control over what is built is the key to this.
Yes,
and what the government's doing across the country is upsetting Tory MPs and me and others by trampling on local people and saying developers can do what they want. We'll back the developer. What should happen is the planning system should back local people who, in my view, can be trusted to make sensible decisions.
But Antonia, not everyone is thrilled with the idea of having affordable housing next to where they live. I mean, that's a fact, isn't it? We might not like it, it might not be right or wrong, but it's the truth.
It's just as good quality as anybody else's house, and you shouldn't be able to tell when you're walking down the drive whether it's affordable or not.
But not everybody wants it next to where they're living, is what I'm saying.
Well, I think there's an awful lot of stigma that's built up, and part of that is the whole right to buy propaganda and things, which mean that people believe that if there's social housing nearby that it's going to cause all sorts of social problems. In fact, the social problems happen when there isn't enough social housing, or when it's done poorly without addressing what people's local needs are. In November, and this city, but I believe that the problems are in communities in the city as well, Natalie Bennett was up and we visited Framework, which is just across the road from here. And rising homelessness is a big problem. And this
Antonia,
is...
we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for coming into the studio.